Hi guys, some of you have requested a Windwalker Monk guide for 10.2, so in this video I want to go over the stats, the gear, the talents and rotation that I'm using in Mythic Plus and trading. I will share some links in the description from Wohead, from the guides that I normally look at, and also the talent trees that I currently use. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments and I'll try to answer them as soon as possible. So yeah, without further ado, let's start with the stats. For Windwalker Monk, it's actually quite simple. We want to stack critical strike and versatility. These two stats are very similar towards each other, so try to create a nice balance between the two stats. Always make sure that you sim yourself when it comes to an upgrade or whatsoever, to make sure that you're in perfect shape. Haste and Mastery are two stats that are not performing so well for Windwalkers. The amount of haste or the amount of Mastery that you need in order to create a DPS increase with combo strikes is just a bit poorly designed, so that's not something that you need to go for. Same goes for haste. This is the worst stat that you want to go for. Try to avoid it as much as possible. For most energy classes, haste generally doesn't work that well because of the energy regeneration that it gives. It's not something that you want to seek out. That being said, unfortunately Windwalker Monk doesn't scale very well with stats. That's also the reason why you see that Windwalker Monks perform very good at the start of the expansion and then drop off quite quickly. Also the reason why we do not get power infusion or that we perform very well in bloodlust stages. Other than that, it's very simple. Crit and versatility are the two go-to stats in that matter. Let's move into the gear. A few sections. Let's start with the trinkets. Always make sure that you have one unused trinket that you can pair up with your cooldowns, and one passive trinket that just deals damage or whatsoever. Like I mentioned, the Windwalker Monk doesn't scale very well with haste or with mastery or with any other stat, to be honest. So most of the time, whenever we can find an item that just deals damage in general, like for example the Signet brand, it is going to be very good for you. This is definitely something that you want to look out for, the Signet brand. It's really good. It's S tier. Just try and get your hands on it. Also, the Ember Soul from the raid is fairly good. The reason for that is that the amount of agility that you get is insane compared to any other trinket out there, and the haste debuff that you get is not that bad for us because, yeah, like I mentioned, we generally don't really like haste. Other than that, when it comes to trinkets, if you do not raid, there's also this trinket from Atal Dazar. Again, just deals damage to the target. It's very boring, but that's the only thing that we really scale with. So try to get your hands on this one if you cannot raid, for example. When it comes to your weapons, the last boss of the new raid, Farak, drops this two-hander. This is something that you want to look out for. The damage again on the equip is something that we want to look at for. Unfortunately, there is some haste on there, so it's not the greatest two-hander in that matter. But this does sim the best for Windwalker Monk. If you do not raid, a good alternative would be the Borrowed Time. This is the two-hander from the new dungeon. This also has haste, but the versatility is definitely a nice stat you can look for. So if you do not raid, this is also a good option to look for. When it comes to crafting, there's two main items you want to go for. The Slimy Expulsion Boots is something that is a huge DPS increase for Windwalker Monk. So this is for sure the first item that you want to craft. Again, the reduction in haste is not something that really hurts us that much, and the amount of damage that it just deals is something that yeah, you will definitely see in your meters. If you have the Slimy Expulsion Boots, make sure you always pair it up with another crafted item that has the Toxified Armor patch. So the increased damage, it increases the damage by 100%. So in my case, I go for the bracers. Again, just go for crit and versatility, and then make sure that the Toxified Armor patch is on top of that. When it comes to your tier pieces, you can go for the legs, the gloves, the head, and the chest. These are the four best combinations to go for. And the non-tier set item that you can go for is the shoulder pads. The ones from Everbloom are actually quite nice. It has some versatility on there and decent amount of mastery. It's not the best shoulders in the world or whatsoever, but yeah, it's the off piece that you want to go for. That's it about all your talents and gear. Make sure that you always sim yourself whenever you find an upgrade to see if it is actually an upgrade, or find any top gear items in your inventory. So for talents, I'm using 3 different builds. The single target build that I'm showcasing right now is something that I use for raiding. When there's absolutely no cleave involved, this is the go-to spec that I go for. It utilizes only single target spells, so you do have a double touch of death that can be used within 5 seconds after using it. So for raid bosses, this increases quite a lot of damage in that matter. Other than that, you don't go for any Mark of the Crane because you're only utilizing your single target spells. So spinning crane kick is something that you barely use. Other than that, a very simple tree that you can just copy paste from the link in the description if you want to use this. For any Mythic Plus environment or bosses when there is cleave involved, like the first or the last boss in the new raid, I would advise to go for a bit more AoE centric build. This is my go-to build, like I mentioned, in the Mythic Plus scene. I generally lose a bit of single target damage, like I mentioned, with the double touch of death, but I'm retaking that damage into a bit more AoE centric builds. You still have the Mark of the Crane, so this really is mandatory in Mythic Plus. Same goes for the Shadow Boxing threat. This increases the amount of targets Blackout Kick deals damage to through 2 additional targets. So with the new tier set, this talent actually is quite strong. Other than that, you have a Mythic Plus build that is really oriented about AoE. That does very poor single target damage, but a very high AoE damage because it utilizes all of the Touch of Death talent nodes. It makes your Touch of Death strike up to 4 additional nearby targets. So this can work well in a situation where your tank is really pulling large packs and you can utilize this. In a POC environment, I wouldn't advise to go for this spec because the single target DPS loss is quite high. So for tyrannical bosses, for example, this talent build doesn't really do that much. When it comes to your general tree, there's not much to say about this one. What is really mandatory, what is not mandatory. It's really about personal preference, in my opinion. There are a few things that I think are very useful to use. Of course, always go for the 2 Touch of Death talents because these are the talents that actually increase your damage. Same goes for the Fast Feet. If you're the only monk in the raid or in the group, make sure that you have both of these talents. If you have multiple monks, then make sure that you're not sort of wasting talent points because this doesn't stack. This talent is also quite okay. It doesn't do crazy amount of damage whatsoever, but it's at least a damage increase. Summon White Tiger statue is a horrible last note, to be honest. I think this needs to be redesigned immediately. But yeah, that might be up whenever we get a redesign or whatsoever. Ring of Peace is really good in a Mythic Plus situation, but also in raiding. So make sure that you have this talent in every build. When it comes to the defensive, I usually play with Dampen Harm. It's just a really good 2-minute cooldown to play around with. And then depending if there's any magic debuff that I need to spell, I either play with Diffuse Magic. This can definitely help you reduce that magic damage taken. And if there isn't that much, then I will just go for a few longs grace. That's it about talents. In the next section, I will talk a bit more about actually applying these talents in rotations. So for the single target rotation, we can use the following priority list from Mohead. I'll start off with the priority list and then show a video of an example of the rotation itself in game. So yeah, let's start off with the first 2 abilities, which are Expel Harms and Tiger Palm. You always want to make sure that you're not overcapping on energy or on chi. You can see that these 2 abilities have a higher priority than even your Chi spending abilities, because you really want to make sure that you're using these abilities to smoothen out your rotation throughout the fight. This does mean that you sometimes have to use Strike of Tiger Palm or Expel Harm before Strike of the Windlord, Fist of Fury, or Rising Sun Kick, if you have the feeling that you're going to overcap on energy. If you feel like you are starved on Chi a lot during fights, it's most of the time the case that you're not using your Expel Harm or Tiger Palms in a correct manner, and that you're really overcapping on energy a lot. Other than that, we always want to make sure that Feline Harmony is on the target. This is a debuff that increases your damage to that target by 12%. So that's quite big. The damage of itself from the stomp is very low, so it's almost neglectable. So that means that you don't have to spam this ability. You just apply the debuff and then you wait for it to run out and then reapply it. We also want to make sure that we have it off cooldown whenever the boss moves. So you have to keep that in mind a little bit whenever you're raiding, for example. Other than that, we move into the Chi spending abilities. So the first priority would be Strike of the Windlord. After that it's Rising Sun Kick with the crit debuff. This is a debuff that you get after Fist of Fury. So in practice, it goes like Strike of the Windlord, Fist of Fury, and then Rising Sun Kick. In between these three abilities, always make sure that you're not overcapping on energy. So using your Expel Harm and Tiger Palms to make sure that you create a smooth rotation. In the dead time, you can use Blackout Kick and Spinning Crane Kicks in single target. But you'll see in practice, you don't use this, or you don't use Spinning Crane Kick that much, because you have to really wait for your Dance of Chi procs, and most of the time you're just starved on Chi anyway for the other three abilities. So an example of that would be the following video. I'm going to play it a little bit slower than in game, so just to follow. Always start with Feline Stomp, then Tiger Palm for the crit debuff that you get, but I will discuss that in the opener as well. This video will be without cooldowns to just give you an idea of how the single target rotation works outside of Serenity or Other than that, I'll move into a Feline Stomp, Tiger Palm, then Strike of the Windlord, and then you want to use your regeneration abilities again, so Tiger Palm or Expel Harm, and then move into Fist of Fury and Rising Sun Kick. So I'll just play the video and then good luck. So yeah, that's about it. I think at the start I even made a little mistake by using Expel Harm before Strike of the Windlord. Well, I was not going to overcap on energy, but it doesn't matter that much in that sense. For the cleave and AoE rotation, our priority list slightly changes. The only big difference that you can see is that Rising Sun Kick becomes less of a high priority compared to Blackout Kick and Spinning Crane Kick with their debuffs or their buffs. Other than that, our rotation doesn't change that much into a 2 to 4 target fight. If you move into a 5 or more target, you can see that Spinning Crane Kick, even without the Dance of Chi proc, has a higher priority compared to Rising Sun Kick. So in a 5+ target situation, try to avoid using Rising Sun Kick as much as possible, because most of the other abilities will be better. Other than that, it's the same old. Don't try to overcap on energy and Chi. Always make sure Feline Stomp is on the target. Strike of the Windlord and Fist of Fury have the highest priority and should be casted on cooldown. Try to make sure that you always use Blackout Kick whenever you have the Blackout Reinforcement. This is of course our tier set proc. And use Spinning Crane Kick whenever you have the Dance of GD proc. Always try to make sure that you use Rising Sun Kick with the crit debuff or buff, sorry, which comes after you end Fist of Fury. So sometimes it can be hard, and try to make sure that you're using Fist of Fury and then Rising Sun Kick directly ahead to make sure that you are maintaining that crit debuff, because 40% extra crit chance is quite high. Other than that, in a more orientated AoE orientated situation, make sure that you're using Spinning Crane Kick almost always whenever you get the Dance of GG proc. It does a lot of damage, as you can see, more than Fist of Fury, but it doesn't overtake Strike of the Windlord. So always make sure that you're using this one on cooldown in that sense. So in gameplay, that will look a little bit like this. I will try to always maintain Feline Stomp and use Tiger Palm afterwards to get the crit debuff. After that, I need a little bit of chi. So what you can start with is actually Feline Stomp and then Expel Harm and then use Tiger Palm in order to maintain the crit debuff a little bit longer on your targets. Other than that, you would like to switch targets with your Tiger Palm to make sure that you're applying the target, the debuff on multiple targets in that sense. So it looks something like this. Yeah, so that's a bit about the cleave rotation. I think I overcapped energy a few times actually, so yeah, that should be managed a little bit better. Other than that, this is it's very similar to the single target rotation, except that Rising Sun Kick becomes a bit less of a priority compared to any other spec. So for our opener and Serenity window, we want to keep in mind a few very simple rules. We always want to try and pair up Invoke the White Tiger together with Serenity in order to maximize the amount of damage Invoke the White Tiger does. Invoke the White Tiger increases the damage based on the amount of damage that you've been dealing, so pairing it up with Serenity is mandatory in that sense. That does mean that you have to delay your Serenity cost by around 30 seconds in order to pair them up nicely. Other than that, during your Serenity window, all of your chi spenders are free, meaning you do not want to worry about chi or energy. So Tiger Palm or Expel Harm are abilities that you do not use during the Serenity cost. Try to get as much Rising Sun Kick as you can inside the window, and never fully channel your Fist of Fury. Fist of Fury, why you want to clip it is because you want to use as much spenders inside the Serenity window as possible to maximize the following talent. The duration of Serenity is extended by every chi spender that you're using. So you don't want to fully channel your Fist of Fury because it's absolutely not useful. The main damage that you're going to get is from Rising Sun Kick. So you want to make sure that you're using that on cooldown every time and not fully channel your Fist of Fury. The last rule that you can keep in mind is if you can try to use Fist of Fury as your last ability inside Serenity, because then the full channel will still maintain the buff of Serenity while Serenity is already gone in that manner. Other than that, during the pre-pull, what you can do is Expel Harm and Chi Burst before you pull, meaning that you can use, for example, Expel Harm around 10 seconds or 6 seconds before a boss pull to already give yourself 1 chi. And same goes for Chi Burst, that also gives you 1 chi. So you start the boss with 2 chi instead of 0. It's not completely mandatory, but it will increase your damage by a little bit. Other than that, you want to maintain Feline Storm, of course. Make sure that you use your Tiger Palm before your Serenity cooldown. So you're still maintaining the 50% crit buff on the target, but not losing any Serenity cooldowns or seconds inside that window. So what it will look like is I'll use the Expel Harm and then the Chi Burst, and then I'll fly in or just walk in, doesn't really matter what you would want to do, and then start using Tiger Palm, Feline Stomp, and then your cooldowns. Oh, sorry, I think I said it the other way around. It's Feline Stomp, then Tiger Palm, and then your cooldowns in that manner. So it will look a little bit like this. You have Feline Stomp, and now you move into all your other cooldowns. And just try to get as much Rising Sun Kick and Fist of Furies inside that window. Always try to maintain Feline Stomp on the target to increase that damage. And the last second you'd like to have your Fist of Fury to make sure that you're still using it correctly. Other than that, you move into the same sort of rotation that you normally have. Do not cap on energy. Always maintain your Feline Stomp and make sure that you're using your spenders whenever you can. It's as simple as that, nothing more, nothing less. I'm not sure what I peaked at that moment, but yeah, you can look that up yourself. It's really about burst DPS. So the monk, Windwalker Monk, has very poor sustained DPS and very high burst DPS, meaning that you would like to also pair that up with, for example, intermissions of bosses where they get increased damage to really maximize your damage. Other than that, that's it for me. If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comments below, and I'll try to answer them and respond on them as soon as possible. Thanks. Bye bye.